LGBT people openly and privately groom and indoctrinate their children into the LGBT cult. The very act of forcing a child to accommodate your sexual fetish by intentionally depriving that child of one or both biological parents is in itself an act of grooming. This is in addition to the more direct forms of grooming that we all know takes place. Studies indicate that the female and male offspring of lesbian parents are significantly more likely to report same-sex attraction, sexual minority identity, and same-sex experience. And numerous studies on single-sex parenting reveal that adolescents raised without both their biological mother and father are more sexually promiscuous. The Cinderella effect is the name given to the occurrence of significantly higher rates of severe child abuse, which includes both physical and sexual abuse, at the hands of step-parents versus biological parents. The common theme of the evil stepmother does not stem from fiction, it stems from reality. Remember, 100% of homosexual couples who have a biological child have one step-parent raising the child. In the case of lesbian couples with a biological child, one of the mothers is a stepmother. Having a non-biological parent is a large factor in all types of child abuse, even with heterosexuals, most of whom have normal, natural sexual drives. Homosexuals are already, by default, mentally ill, perverted, and sexually abusive towards each other. So, of course, they will abuse their poor children in all possible ways. Research has shown that a child living in a home with a non-biological parent is the most powerful predictor of severe child abuse. And obviously, 100% of children raised by homosexual couples must, by default, have at least one non-biological parent. Step-parents themselves constitute a risk factor for child abuse. Preschoolers living with one natural and one step-parent are 40 times more likely to become child abuse cases than are like-aged children living with two natural parents. Research has also shown that preschoolers living with a non-biological father are 40 times more likely to be sexually abused than preschoolers living with two biological parents. Step-parents commit child abuse and homicide at much higher rates than genetic parents. Another study found a disproportionate percentage of children are sexually molested by homosexual parents compared to heterosexual parents. In this study, 29% of the adult children of homosexual parents reported they had been sexually molested by a homosexual parent, compared to only 0.6% of the adult children of heterosexual parents. A study of over 5,000 adults revealed that incest in childhood is disproportionately experienced by both male and female homosexuals. 50% of male homosexuals reported same-sex incest in childhood. 69% of homosexual males reported same-sex sexual molestation from male relatives as children. 33% of lesbians reported same-sex incest in childhood. 12% of male homosexuals versus 0.8% of male heterosexuals reported brother-brother incest in childhood. These findings are consonant with those of other studies in which disproportionately more incest by homosexuals was reported. As opposed to an evolutionary genetic hypothesis, these data support the alternative that homosexuality may be learned, since homosexuals do not produce children at sustainable levels, and the incidence of homosexuality varies as a function of various social factors. Incest cannot be excluded as a significant basis for homosexuality. Another study shows having a homosexual parent increases the risk of incest with that parent by a factor of about 50. Even the leader of the National Center for Lesbian Rights proudly admits that lesbians and homosexual men groom their children into LGBT confusion. She said, "There's only one response to a study that children raised by lesbian and gay parents are more likely to reject notions of rigid sexual orientation. That response has to be elation." As another very influential homosexual activist stated, being queer is more than setting up house, sleeping with a person of the same gender, and seeking state approval for doing so. Being queer means pushing the parameters of sex, sexuality, and family, and in the process transforming the very fabric of society. Biology has meaning, biology has purpose, and it is a severe mistake to assume otherwise. Even pro-homosexuality researchers admit that children of homosexual parents express a significant increase in homoeroticism, and that studies indicate that a higher proportion of children with homosexual parents are themselves apt to engage in homosexual activity. Disturbingly, these researchers think this is a good thing. Children raised by lesbians grow up far more open to homosexual relationships than those raised by heterosexual parents. A significantly greater proportion of young adult children raised by lesbians report having had a homosexual relationship. In one study, 24% of adult children raised by lesbians reported having homosexual relationships, compared with 0% of those raised by heterosexual parents. Girls raised by lesbian couples are far more promiscuous than girls raised by heterosexual parents. This correlates with studies showing that fatherless girls are far more promiscuous than girls who are raised by a loving father. Fathers have a huge impact on the psychological health of their children. Not a single homosexual should ever be around children, let alone be allowed to raise any. As another woman raised by two lesbians explains, I have lesbian parents, and I was raised atheist and have no religious affiliations. When people look at children of gays, the misconception is straight away that we are well loved and that we must be stable and happy. The reason for this is that the gay community is promoting this ideology that love is love, and that we don't actually need any biological roots at all to be parented well and to be well-adjusted and happy. This has been incorrect for me and many others, and the promotion of this ideology has made it difficult for people in my position to come forward and say what is actually going on behind closed doors for us. The lie affects us in so many different ways. In truth, a lot of us are just too scared to speak up. The truth is that growing up with two mothers forced me to be confused about who I was and where I fit in the scheme of the world, and there is not a moment where I have looked back and thought that I did not crave that male stability and that father in my life. I felt best when I was in the presence of my grandfather, my main male influence. But in general, spending quality time around men was the equivalent of going to Disneyland. I would hang on their every word, watch their every mannerism, and bombard them with loads of annoying questions. You see attention-seeking behavior in young fatherless children all the time. And when you've been through a similar circumstance, you can spot the signature father hunger signs a mile away. This behavior is everywhere. It just goes unnoticed because it doesn't fit into our idea of the modern family. Children quite obviously love men as much as they love women and will naturally try to compensate for their absence because we're drawn to create bonds with men. It feels natural to us. With LGBT parenting, they simply pretend that the child doesn't even have a parent of the opposite gender. These unhealthy situations require a child to miss out on something critical, and ignoring that reality really pisses me off. The only way for a homosexual to be a good parent is to not be a parent. A good parent would never harm their child, and homosexual parenting is, by definition, harmful to children. Nature decided that it is impossible for two people of the same gender to make a child, for very good reasons. Lesbians are mentally ill women who are fueled by a combination of narcissistic hurt and rage towards themselves and towards others. A woman who was raised by two lesbians says that growing up, she was surrounded by a constant level of anger and negativity. Lesbianism expert Dr. Elaine Siegel said that her lesbian patients were consumed by intense aggression and rage that was constantly simmering. Women like this should never be allowed to be around children, let alone raise any. Research has shown the devastating effects of divorce on both minor children and adult children, and lesbians have an extremely high divorce rate. As if it wasn't bad enough that their so-called marriages are not real marriages to begin with. They don't even last. The very idea of a lesbian or male homosexual marriage is an absolutely ridiculous joke, an insult and a total mockery of the real sacred marriage that can only take place between a male and a female. Marriage can only exist and function between two complementary beings. By the way, the only reason male homosexuals have lower rates of divorce than lesbians is because the overwhelming majority of male homosexual marriages are actually open marriages, where both men accept and embrace infidelity. Homosexuals are basically incapable of having functional, deeply intimate, and loving romantic relationships. And of course, how could they? It is impossible to have a functional relationship when you are trying to force a relationship which is fundamentally incompatible on every possible level. level. It is absolutely crazy that the harmful effects of fatherlessness have been known about for decades. But all of a sudden, everyone conveniently forgets about the harms of fatherlessness when lesbians are intentionally causing it. Truly sickening. Even Barack Obama admitted the harms that come with not having a good father in the home.
We know the statistics that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime. They're 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in prison. They're more likely to have behavioral problems or run away from home or become teen parents because the father wasn't in the home.
A father's presence makes a big difference in a child's long-term development. Ross Park, PhD, a psychologist at the University of California at Riverside, explains that children of involved fathers regulate their own emotions better. They also have better social skills than children whose fathers are not involved in their lives. He says, "It is clear that fathers affect their children's social, cognitive, and emotional development. A father's influence seems to come, in part, through the unique ways that fathers play and interact with their children," says Kyle Pruitt, MD, a child psychiatrist at Yale. Fathers are more likely to encourage their kids to tolerate frustration and master tasks on their own before they offer help, whereas mothers tend to assist a fussing child earlier. More than any particular social or cognitive skill, however, a father's love and affection may be the most significant gift he can give his children, says Ronald Rohner, PhD, a psychologist-anthropologist at the University of Connecticut, who for the past 40 years has been studying the effects of father love on children's development. He explains, "A father's love is often a significant buffer against depression, conduct problems, and substance abuse." Rohner says, "Children who experience their father's love are often more emotionally stable, less angry, have better self-esteem, and have a more positive worldview." To his surprise, he discovered that father love is as influential as mother love on a child's happiness and sense of well-being. Rohner and his colleagues reviewed 100 U.S. and European studies. Their results can be found in the Review of General Psychology. Although researchers are just beginning to study the children of involved fathers, there is a mountain of research on the children of absent fathers. Those children are at a higher risk for school failure and dropout, drug use, teen pregnancy, delinquency, and teen suicide. Fathers clearly play an important role in the psychological and social survival of their kids. It is absolutely insane and evil for anyone to believe or promote the absolute lie that a lesbian can replace a father's love and care and his positive impact on every single aspect of child development. A good father is necessary for healthy child development, and there are no substitutes for a good father, just like there are no substitutes for a good mother in the case of male homosexual couples. Our binary biology has a functional, intelligent purpose. It has been consistently observed that father wounds cause severe psychological disturbance in children, including the development of narcissistic disorders such as male and female homosexuality. Nature is not stupid. Nature is highly intelligent, and nature designed human life to be created only by one man and one woman, because this model is the only model that can raise psychologically healthy and functional humans. Every child needs and deserves one full-time biological father and one full-time biological mother who are monogamous. There are no substitutions for nature's design. Even the way that fathers bond with, play with, and interact with their children is dramatically different from mothers. Male and female behavior is innate behavior, and it is impossible for 2 lesbians or 2 homosexual males to duplicate opposite gender behavior. Males and females have fundamentally different energy, and this energy has an impact on child development as well. The importance of the psychological, physical, and energetic differences between fathers and mothers cannot be overstated. A father looks, feels, smells, sounds, and acts differently than a mother. These beneficial differences between moms and dads are crucial for the healthy development of children.